Good morning, Major Delacroix. Have a seat. Sentinel didn't want to have a seat. He didn't want to be in the conference room at all. Everything sleek, modern, and sanitized. Unfortunately for him, it was part of the job. And Sentinel was a rule follower for the most part, albeit a reluctant one in this case. So he did as requested and took one of the empty seats around the conference table. Most of the chairs were empty, and the few that were full held people he didn't recognize. There were a handful of Eclipse Initiative higher-ups that Sentinel answered to on a regular basis, and only one of them was present, Second Lieutenant McIntosh. She looked just as thrilled to be at the meeting as Sentinel himself did. The Major was used to quick, no-nonsense chats in small Eclipse Initiative offices, meetings that told him what he needed to know, what was coming up next, and what needed to change. For the most part, Umbrel let the Eclipse Initiative arm of the megacorporation exist in a semi-independent, self-governing state. He got the feeling that was about to change. "Can I get you anything to drink before we get started?" The Umbrel agent, in a crisp black suit, asked him. "No, sir." The agent gave him a long, suffering look and nodded once. "Great. Let's get into it then. My name is Agent Sinclair, and I'm one of the people Umbrel is charged with reviewing some of the, let's say, interesting things happening within the Eclipse Initiative. I'm sure this is no surprise to you, but the name Ares has come across my desk quite a few times in the past few months. We keep busy." "Yes, to say the least." Sinclair sighed. He picked up a tablet from the table in front of him and flipped through a few screens before tapping on something, and an image was projected into the air above the conference table. It was a list of Eclipse Initiative teams, the lower-level ones mentioned by name, while higher-level teams like Ares were marked by a series of letters and numbers instead. Sinclair tapped on Ares, and the screen changed. It made his head pound to look at it. Sentinel, of course, knew that Umbrel kept a detailed file on everything involved in the Eclipse Initiative, but seeing every action and every member of his team laid so bare made him uneasy. As you can see, Ares is, overall, incredibly effective and successful. It's also why you're one of the longest-standing teams. Rarely are we lucky enough to pair operatives up that function so seamlessly with one another. Sentinel didn't know what he was supposed to say to any of that. He knew they were good. He also knew that he had pissed off enough people to nearly be demoted. Sinclair scrolled down the page, past the grayed-out picture of Cypher among the full-color photos of the rest of them, to a list of incidents. "But as you can also see here, there have been some hiccups with Ares lately. You were indirectly responsible for the loss of deep-water specialist Mariner, and failed to recover any live specimens during the Genesis operation. There are other notes here, but those were the most costly for Umbrel, and what led to the recent corrective action that you've experienced. Is this something I need to be here for? Because believe it or not, I know all of this already, sir." Sinclair raised a single eyebrow, jaw clenched. "This is for the benefit of those here who don't know these facts. As I was saying..." The agent's voice became background noise for Sentinel, but he tuned in enough to know when the history lesson was over, and the tone of the conversation changed. "We say all of this as a prelude to letting you know that as far as Umbrel is concerned, the original rankings of your team can be reinstated, You will remain as the commander, and Sergeant Gideon will return to being your second in command. That made Sentinel sit up straighter. Understood. It's already been made clear to the sergeant that his position as your co-commander was only temporary. There will be, of course, other opportunities for him going forward. This set off alarm bells in Sentinel's mind. What sort of opportunities? He had no interest in his team being split apart, sent in different directions. Sinclair continued. For the moment, though, we're quite happy with Ares' performance and competency. So as we move forward with the next stages of Umbral's full transition into a major military power, your team will be one of the keys to keeping the transition smooth. So no big moves just yet. But you're anticipating them in the future? Once Umbral and the Eclipse Initiative have been established as one of the planet's most powerful armed forces, we will undoubtedly need to expand. We have one member of Ares, Corporal Watson, shortlisted as a commander for a new team when the time comes. One of your new focuses will be preparing him for this role. It was a lot to digest all at once, but none of it surprised Sentinel. He was no stranger to the inner workings of the Eclipse Initiative, and Jester certainly wasn't the first operative he would have promoted out from under him. Usually it was an honor, proof that Sentinel was the kind of leader that created new leaders. But this time he felt a pang of loss for the future. He wondered what Jester himself thought about the whole thing. Now, Sinclair was pacing a circle around the table, still talking. Which brings me to my next point. Corporal Watson, for all that we believe he will make a good leader, is a perfect example of something we've seen crop up among various Eclipse soldiers that isn't ideal. In the past, we've seen no problem in each member carrying a loadout specified to best benefit them as an individual. Slowly, this has morphed into the personalization of uniforms, the speaking out of turn, the unprofessionalism becoming of an Eclipse Initiative soldier. While harmless thus far, this could be a detriment to the overall conformity we want the teams and their appearances to convey. From here forward, unless the team member has a specialized role, all loadouts and all uniforms will be identical. Any insignia, patches, or additions to uniforms will need to be removed before the next mission. Sentinel couldn't help but smirk. I think you're underestimating how much we're going to stick out no matter what. The Eclipse Initiative teams have a reputation that precedes us. We're well aware. It's not that Umbral wants you to blend in with the masses. The benefits of complete uniformity among all teams will help quash unneeded feelings of individuality when in the field, as well as work as an intimidation tactic for our enemies, of course. Sinclair looked back at the projection, and Sentinel followed his gaze to where their team picture was. Ares is the poster child for why Umbral's approach to leadership and team building works. The members of your team have a cohesion that's rare. That's what Umbral wants for the entirety of the Eclipse Initiative. And that starts with a united front. It was a good thing that the team was on a bit of a hiatus, because the idea of telling everyone they were expected to strip their uniforms clean of personal touches was not something Sentinel was looking forward to. They weren't the type of team to be flashy and loud about their accomplishments. Well, except for Jester. But he knew they took a certain pride in their differences. When he called the team to meet, there were other things on the agenda he hoped would distract them from the stripping of their personal touches. Raptor's return to his second-in-command had been discussed in private, and to Sentinel's surprise, Raptor took it in stride. They met in the equipment room, already scheduled for a training exercise that morning, but were short one member. "Where's Hawkeye?" Sentinel asked. "Remember, he had that surgery to remove that thing they put in his head," Aegis responded, arms crossed and leaning against one of the lockers. "I stopped by to check on how it all went earlier today, and one of his nurses said he'd need a little bit longer to recover. But he will be fully briefed on everything before they send him back to us." Tempest frowned. "Briefed on what exactly? I thought we were just training." "We are, but this is a little different." Sentinel pulled his shirt over his head and opened his locker to pull on a fresh one. "I know a few of you specifically aren't going to be thrilled about this, but before you decide to mouth off, remember that I'm still your superior officer, even if you all seem to forget it constantly." The locker door banged closed, and he turned to face the rest of the team. They were all watching him, expectant and alert. "There's been a change in equipment procedures for everyone under the Eclipse initiative. Effective immediately, you're to remove any personalization from your uniforms and take your equipment to the armory. If anything is out of spec, it will be fixed. The rest will be replaced." A chorus of groans filled the room. "Are you serious?" Tempest asked. "Completely. It's not just Ares. Every single member of every team will be wearing the same exact thing and carrying the same weapons. We all know how much they've expanded both the air and naval sections, so they want to display a united front with every single soldier they have." "I'm guessing this is more than just a cosmetics thing then," Aegis said. "Umbrel is looking at the Eclipse initiative as the face of a new military presence. A real threat to the existing powers of the world." Raptor, silent until that point, spoke up. "That means they want us at the forefront of it all. It's an honor." "Shape up or shut up," Jester grumbled. Sentinel wanted to tell the corporal to be quiet, just to do as he was told for once, but he was surprised to realize a tiny part of him agreed, so he kept it short. "Essentially. And every one of you needs to listen to me right now. If you try to buck the system too hard, there's nothing I can do to protect you." He let his gaze linger on Aegis longer than the rest. "We've gotten back into Umbrel's good graces, so let's keep it that way." There was a long silence, filled with unspoken complaints, but everyone kept their thoughts to themselves. Once Sentinel was sure his message had gotten through, he moved on to the last order of business, the one that the latter part of his meeting with Agent Sinclair had been about. "Good. Now, as Aegis reminded us earlier, Hawkeye will no longer be acting as our electronic warfare specialist. As we all know, that position is essential to our jobs. So Umbrel has decided to let Ares be the first team to work with one of their prototypes." As if on cue, whoever programmed the thing must have had a flair for the dramatic. The heavy, perfectly synchronized steps of the prototype could be heard entering the equipment room. Everyone turned to look at the gleaming, oil-black robot as it approached, their distorted reflections clear in its mirror-shined helmet. "This is EXO-001. He'll be with us for the foreseeable future." EXO-001 stopped a few feet away, its arms held tightly at its sides. The only sounds were the hum of its machinery. "I don't understand," Jester said. "I'm not sure I understand either, but it's not our place to. From what I've been told, he should work with the team seamlessly without any extra effort from us." The robot's head snapped up, eyelessly looking at Ares. It was creepy as hell. "I am an artificial intelligence, capable of hacking enemy communications and disrupting enemy electronic weaponry and armor. My capabilities are significantly higher than any human could hope to achieve." Jester laughed, but the sound was weak and nervous. No offense, but you're kind of a downgrade from Cypher." Exo turned to Jester. "Unlikely." "Enough," Sentinel interjected. "He's not a downgrade, because he's not meant to replace our former comrade. We're a team. We need another team member, and this is what Umbral decided." Silence hung over them again, and this time it wasn't easy to break. "I suggest we get to training." Later that night, Tempest carried the enormous equipment bag full of her new gear to her locker and carefully arranged it inside. Her uniform had been given the all clear after she removed the most precious thing she owned anyway. The strip of blanket from her twin sister was shoved in her pocket, and Tempest hated the indignity of it. One shred of who she had been all those years ago was all she had, and Umbral wanted to take that away from her too. Typical. She was the last one to return from the armory, an intentional move. Once she was done unloading everything, Tempest tucked her helmet under her arm, shut her locker, and went to head back to her apartment. "Nothing to see here. Everything is totally normal," she thought, adjusting the grip on the helmet. Tempest had almost made it out of the room when she heard the snick of a locker being opened. Cursing under her breath, she turned just enough to see a figure moving stiffly, gathering a few pieces of his own gear. Head pale and shaved, incision still crusted with dried blood and marked with black stitches, Hawkeye turned, just enough to see her out of the corner of his eye. There was a long pause before Tempest heard him exhale as he turned back to his things, as if he didn't see her at all. Back in her apartment, Tempest deposited the helmet on her coffee table. Then she retrieved the small sewing kit Jester had slid into her hand earlier in the day and got to work. Carefully, with steady hands, she made a tiny incision in the helmet's padding, right near the ear where it was thickest. Then, feeling a pang of sorrow in her stomach, she took out the strip of her sister's blanket and cut a small piece from the corner. With the tip of her fingernail, she pressed the minuscule piece of fabric into the incision and sealed it with one impossible to notice black stitch. Just like that, she had her little piece of the past back. She would be Tempest for Umbral for as long as necessary. She was a good soldier, but she was also Ari Pack, sister of Gia Pack, and they would have to pry that identity out of her cold, dead hands.